Several years ago, Steve Jobs returned to Apple Computer, and people knew things were going to be different with his first ad campaign. You remember it? It was great big pictures of thinkers and people that had moved the world. Not a picture of an Apple product anywhere, with just two words: think different. Remember that? It was really outside the box. He was thinking different. Well, right around this same time, he's coming to the headquarters there in Cupertino, and instead of parking in an unmarked spot, he'd park right in the handicapped spot, right by the front door. And he comes out of his office one day to his car, and he notes a sheet of paper under the windshield wiper. He picks it up, looks at it, and it says, "Park different." Obviously, somebody in Apple Computer felt a little bad about the handicapped spot being taken up by the CEO, a little bit of umbrage. And Steve Jobs, being Steve Jobs, immediately went to security and said, "Find out which laser printer this came from, analyze the toner." I imagine those guys were going, whoa. Well, a Pharisee, right? I mean, Steve Jobs was an arrogant kind of guy. If you were unfortunate enough to work for him, you would realize that. But it's a dangerous thing to categorize people. Sometimes we can be completely off base. We might think somebody is really, really humble, when in reality they get behind closed doors at home and they're anything but. It's a public face or persona that they show. Somebody could be really arrogant in our eyes. We might not understand where that perceived arrogance comes from. The gospel lesson we heard today is very tempting. It's tempting for me and maybe for you to look around and say, yeah, Pharisee. Oh, what a tax collector. Pharisee, tax collector, Pharisee. And then we just put people into neat little categories, which doesn't allow people to be what? Be who they are. Which automatically sets up a barrier between me trying to know and understand the other. I don't think the gospel lesson was intending that to happen. Instead, I think this gospel lesson is best put to use when the finger turns around and comes this way. Wow, I was really acting like a Pharisee the other day. And then what can I do? Oh, there's a sin, so now I'm going to beat myself up and say, "Oh God, forgive me, a sinner, have mercy," and become the tax collector, right? It doesn't really operate that way, because both have to do with a perverse sense of pride. I'm so proud of my sin, it makes me humble. Instead, it works for me when I say, how much of that Pharisee comes through? And when the Pharisee comes through, what teases it out? What compulsion, what obsession, what kind of pattern is playing out here in my life that makes me arrogant or insufferable? And then when I get on this, oh, woe is me kick, what in the world's going on there? The idea is to better understand who I am, not to beat myself up, but to accept those two possibilities and meet the one in the center. That employee at Apple, I don't think Steve Jobs ever found him. He would have been fired probably. I don't think he really understood what was going on with Steve Jobs, because he was already fighting for his life with pancreatic cancer at that time. He probably needed that parking space right there by the front door after getting chemo or whatever treatment he was going through. The guy didn't think. He just categorized Jobs. He heard the comments. He had experienced Jobs. He's an arrogant you-know-what. Therefore, park different. We can use this gospel and do things like that. or we can enter into this gospel and understand the motivations within ourselves that drive us towards either arrogance, the arrogance of, oh, I'm so good, or, gee, what a horrible sinner I am. And in understanding those, stand in the presence of God's love and know what real redemption is.